Hello, everyone. So thrilled for you to join us today. I'm Kate Parkin from Arts Council and Senior Officer for the Place-Based Peer Learning Programme. For the purposes of audio describing, I'm female with a brown fringe and a kind of blue tank top today. At today's session, we're really pleased that you've been able to join us for a session on how to activate creative citizens. We'll be exploring what creative and social citizens look like in your place, examples of practice, both in terms of projects and community citizens, and how to support a further call to action. We're thrilled to be joined today by 5 speakers, and they are Jess Plant, Places Director from National Sector Support Organisation Creative Lives, Sammy Gitschke, Trustee, School Governor, Consultant, Student and all-round voluntary leader, Vicky Jackson, Director of Jack of Hearts in Hartlepool and co-director of the Wintertide Festival, Louise Yates, CEO of Back to Hours in Hull, and finally, Emma Sarjo, previously a volunteer, now a member of staff at Back to Hours in Hull. We're also joined by 2 fantastic BSL interpreters, very much needed. They are Jo and Claire, and they'll be with us throughout the session. We also have the option of captions, so I've made them available, so you can just press the show captions at the bottom of your menu bar. The session today is 2 hours with a break about 3 o'clock. We can accept questions after each, if there's a few minutes spare, but we've saved 15 minutes at the end for a conversation questions. Please feel free to either put up your hand or just put them in the chat. I'll read them out to everyone before we answer. And for information, this session's been recorded and will be available next week up on our resources in terms of events, so you can share widely or watch later on as well. We hope you enjoy the session. So without further ado, I'll just introduce you to Jess.
Hi everyone. I'm Jess Plant from Creative Lives. Thanks for the introduction, Kate. For the purposes of a description, I've got blonde or shoulder length hair, I'm wearing glasses, and I'm in my mid-40s. So I'm going to share my presentation. And I could talk about this topic in so many different ways, because as a sector support organisation, this is really what we're all about. So it was quite hard to pick examples to talk about, but I'm hoping that the things I share with you today are useful and provide some interesting examples for discussion. But there are lots of different ways that I could have approached this. So I'm sharing this picture here, activating creative citizens, because I feel like this is a good example of creative citizenship. And you said, what do they look like? And I hope, they're all wearing flowery swimming caps and doing some kind of creative activity. This was a project in Dublin from quite a long time ago, actually, but I just thought it was such a lovely image. I wanted to kick us off with that. So for those of you who don't know, Creative Lives champions, supports and promotes and nurtures local creative groups in order to build more sustainable communities. And our goal is to help creative groups have the capacity, resilience and connections to work collaboratively towards local solutions. For those of you who might remember us, we used to be called the Voluntary Arts Network. So our roots are very much in kind of amateur, which the word amateur doesn't get used that much anymore, but thinking about things like amateur choirs, amateur theatre groups, knitting groups. And I think, lots of people on this call will be involved with Creative People and Places and lots of small CICs and creative projects. And I think that ecosystem is quite kind of broad and far reaching, which I think is one of the reasons we changed our name, because it felt we needed to kind of move with the times. But I think there really is an interesting conversation about kind of volunteering and participating. If you join a choir, you volunteer, or are you just somebody who joins a choir because it's good for you? So there's another big discussion about that. But please do have a look at our website. We're very much here to support those local groups as an NPO. So just a quick kind of overview of things that we have that might be useful to refer people to and signpost people to in terms of our resources. Lots of small groups, start around a kitchen table of people wanting to do things locally. They see either a need or they've got an interest themselves. So I'm interested in bookbinding, so maybe I set up a local bookbinding group, or I see a need for something to help young mums and people go and set something up. So it can be led by kind of people's personal creative endeavour, but also by a need in local community. But if you know of these groups, then we do have lots of interesting stuff on our website in terms of budgeting, risk assessments, insurance, how to welcome new members, and we do lots of free events and activities and resources on our website for people. So that's just a kind of overview of who we are. I want to talk more specifically about our place work, as this is the place-based peer learning network. And I think as a national organisation, it's quite difficult to know where to sort of channel your resources. So a couple of years ago, we started doing more hyper-local work to try and work in specific places, as well as having this kind of national sort of overview and lead as an organisation. So I'm going to talk through just a couple of places to kind of illustrate the work that we do across the country. So in terms of our kind of local place-based work, which is very much kind of evolving as we do this, because it's only been a couple of years that we've done this very specific place-based work. And we often work directly with a local authority or a cultural trust, as well as all the community groups, to do lots of local mapping, to bring people together, because often we'll find that there'll be lots of people doing all these different things. For example, kind of, a bookbinding group in a church, a singing group, a choir, but they might not all come together. So we try and do some of that networking. We also deliver bespoke training based on need at a local level. And we also have a partnership with local BBC Radio, which is a really interesting one, which I'll talk about in more detail later. We deliver lots of microgrants, which I'm going to talk about as an example of how we might activate activity. And we also carry out research and strategy development. So just going to talk a little bit about a project in Reading, which we've been working on really, really recently. It just kind of came to an end, but it's an 18-month project. We've been working very locally in 2 wards in Reading, so quite a small area. We always hire a local freelancer because I think, there's that challenge of being a national organisation and kind of coming into work somewhere. Our model is always to work in a local way. So somebody on the ground very much worked to map local groups and bring them together. Found over 170 local groups who were either not necessarily all in the ward, but might be working in the wards. And we distributed over £50,000 in microgrants, ranging from £500 to £5,000. Some of those groups had never got a kind of grant before. So a really interesting range. They then delivered nearly 200 workshops, and actually I think these are very low numbers in terms of actually what happened, because the challenge of microgrants is very hard to get evaluation back from them because it's such small amounts of money. These are the people who did fill in the forms, and so we did, but I think many more people were involved in this project than those participants. And they were also featured on BBC Radio Berkshire as part of our partnership with local BBC Radio, so they get a bit of media training and feature on local radio as well. And we've just written a report, which we hope to publish soon, which kind of showcases this work, but really, really was a sort of partnership between the council, the local groups, and one of the local councillors said that what the joy of the project was very much that assets-based approach, that it was coming from people who already were being creative in the area rather than bringing in additional artists, if you like. And that's another whole conversation. But here's a lovely picture of us all celebrating the kind of end of that project, where we shared all the grants, and that ranged from people doing South Asian dance, theatre with people with disabilities. We had African drumming. There was a zine making group, and all of these group leaders, which are in this picture, came together and are now kind of forming a network. And hopefully that's the legacy of that project, that they go on to work together more collectively. Another example is talking about our microgrants. So we've been working with Bradford, obviously the City of Culture this year, and we've been giving out grants for around £400 as part of it was called Do Your Thing, the grant scheme. And we very much gave out grants to lots of different groups. I think we had over 180 applications and we gave out 54 grants. So there's definitely a demand for people to do this kind of like creative endeavours and be part of something. I think what was really interesting is that lots of the projects weren't necessarily from arts organisations or artists. It was youth groups or choirs or churches or school groups or just a group of friends coming together wanting to do something. So I think that's a kind of different approach, really. And some of them will have then hired and used the £450 to bring in an artist or to bring something into that space. And we also supported them again with things like safeguarding insurance, that type of thing. We've also been doing something similar in Rotherham, supporting a microgrant scheme there. And again, it was groups like Scouts or youth clubs who maybe don't have the confidence to think of themselves as artists or to work in this space. So giving out really small grants to encourage them to do something creative, perhaps for the first time, or to have a go at a creative project. And so they're kind of underway at the moment. So we look forward to the results of these microgrants. Just to talk a little bit more about another example of working in Norfolk and Suffolk. This is a bit more strategic work that we've been doing. So we've been working in the kind of creative health space a little bit to map projects in Norfolk and Suffolk and also now in Essex. And I guess I just wanted to highlight this because to showcase the range of things that we do at Creative Lives in terms of working in different ways, and our place-based work is different depending on the place. But we were commissioned by Norfolk and Suffolk Culture Board to do this piece of work. And I think, you know, that really did broaden out that ecosystem of all the different creative organisations working here. And I'm not going to dwell on that too much, but just an interesting example. But another much more hyper-local example was when we worked with Norfolk and Suffolk local radio station to do this beautiful photography project where at the beginning, I think it was definitely January, I can't remember what year, but we did this gorgeous call out with the local radio called New Beginnings, and people sent in beautiful photographs, a really simple project, a really accessible project. And then there was a display of the photographs in a local shopping centre and the stories in there of people's new beginnings, just a really simple prompt, new beginnings, brought up some really profound stories that people shared. There's a lovely video on our website, which I'll share afterwards, of people's new beginnings. And I think that, that just prompt or brief can be really helpful. Again, another project in Edenderry. I think there's lots of learning from this. Again, it's quite, this is in Ireland, so a different example, but very similar probably to Creative People and Places in England, the Arts Council version. But this is a much smaller town in Ireland, and very much led by the people in that space. And the kind of brief has been to make a more creative and cultural town, very much led by a steering group made up of community members. They've had a kind of budget that they've managed themselves to give out grants to new artists. So people very much led by the people of that place. And some really interesting kind of large grant schemes, micro grant schemes and artist commissions that steering group have really led. And there's some really, they've got an extra year's funding now and that continues. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Know Your Neighbourhood, because that seemed like a sort of scheme that links up lots of this activity and comes back to, why we might do this work, which is, those reasons about building community, reducing loneliness, improving well-being. And we were funded by Arts Council England via the DCMS to give out grants to reduce loneliness in 26 priority places in England. And I'm sure there's lots of people on this call who may have either received a grant or are part of that cohort. But I think this was a really interesting example of how lots of volunteers were involved and lots of different groups got involved in activity. And brings back that question of volunteering versus participation. But I just wanted to share a lovely example here of Electric Pink Voices, who are an LGBTQ plus choir based in Blackpool. And you can see some wonderful, again, I'll share the link because this video is just so wonderful. And it showcases this choir who've gone on such a journey from a very small choir to this slightly bigger organisation. And it really has given people a sense of belonging to be part of this choir. And I think they're now going on to do some big European adventure as this wonderful, very locally based choir. So I just wanted to bring together some, I guess thought it might be useful because we've collated all this information from all these different projects, and there's a few kind of lessons learnt from the projects as a whole. Which I think kind of comes across for all the different projects. I'm sure, will probably be very obvious and make sense to lots of people, but I just thought there were 6 themes that seemed quite useful. That activity works first, rather than talking about like loneliness or, you know, people want to do something fun, like music or gardening or, you know, coming along. In terms of volunteering, people want really small, easy tasks. So I think one thing might lead to the other. So we found that, you know, people who might start setting up the chairs and making cups of tea, and then slowly but surely get more involved into a more formal volunteering role. Flexibility was essential. So drop in low commitment activities really worked well. The partnership really expanded reach. So where people were working together, that really helped. So larger and smaller organisations together, lots of local groups working, a library working with a craft group. Those partnerships really kind of increased impact. Embedding pride in place really helps. So projects that worked, you know, around local history, a building, a river, a local park really helped create that kind of sense of pride of place, which I'm sure you all know. And that creative projects are all struggling with capacity. You know, I think there's a sort of, in terms of volunteering as a whole, it's a kind of aging population. We know that they're really struggling to retain skilled volunteers, and that's true across the board. So that's a sort of larger issue that we might want to discuss. I just wanted to finish. I've got 2 more slides to share. So I'm sorry I can't see the chat, but I hope I'm doing okay with time. We do a monitor of all our, a survey of all our creative groups once a year. I think about 500 different groups filled it in this year. And generally people are optimistic. I mean, people who volunteer, generally optimistic people doing this for the love of it. And obviously, I know lots of the groups I've talked about are not volunteer groups, because it is a broad spectrum, just to say that. But we know that groups are struggling to find sufficient resources and audience members and volunteers, and that groups felt a bit disconnected from their local authorities and maybe were lacking confidence in raising issues. We did find that groups that worked with us were doing better, which is really good for us in terms of our survey. That might be a bit self-selective in terms of who's filling it in. But in summary, we found a really resilient, you know, voluntary creative sector, but they are struggling with funding. So volunteer burnout is a bit of an issue, potentially a bit isolated, that aging demographic that I talked about, and obviously that impact of cost of living. I think people do have less and less time to volunteer in these spaces. So sorry, I feel like I'm finishing on a low note, but absolutely not at all, because we know that this work is thriving in communities and people are doing brilliant things, and hopefully I shared some really lovely examples there. But just another link to our resources, which I know people might find useful in terms of sharing with the groups that they're working with. I'm sure people on this call are all really familiar with this, but in terms of activating other people to set up groups, there's lots of resources on our website. So thank you very much. I hope that was useful.
Thank you so much, Jess. You didn't need me to remind you about timings at all. You have plenty of time. If anyone would like to ask questions, feel free to drop a line, either put your hand up or just drop a line within the chat function, and I'll call them out. Otherwise, we'll wait to the end of the session and have a kind of a wider discussion and debate. I think we're okay at the moment. I don't see any hands up. Oh, Olivia, your hand's up. Olivia Hearn?
Hello. Yep, sorry, it took me a while to do it. Normally we use Teams. Hello there. I just wondered how you manage the micro grants in order of like kind of the governance and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge and you have to be kind of prepared to give away a bit of responsibility, but we have local panels. So it's different in each place depending on where the source of funding has come from. So in Bradford, for example, the funding, you know, I think it came through lottery, but part of the City of Culture. We set up a local panel, which had people from Bradford City of Culture, people from the council, ourselves. We had a process, you know, I mean, it is very rigorous what we do. And obviously, you know, for not very much money, that is a huge commitment, because we do, you know, 2 members of staff read every application. We have to support groups who, you know, get those things like I talked about in terms of insurance. So yeah, it's quite complicated, but I think the payoff is really worth it, because you're kind of empowering local groups to do that work themselves. I hope that answers your question. I can send more information if you need more.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, Jess. There's no one else for the moment. Can't see any other hands. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sammy, who's going to talk about his experience from probably the other side.
Hello, everyone. I am Sammy, and the purposes of visual description, I think that's what Kate said. I am male. I have wavy black hair, and I'm wearing a checkered shirt. But hopefully, what I'm going to talk about is going to be a bit different, and I'm not using slides because I want you to directly engage with what I'm saying. And if there's any questions or anything that comes up along the way, I am looking at the chat, so feel free to put them in, and I'll try my best to keep up with them. But I've been asked to talk about how to activate creative citizens and my own perspective as a young volunteer, but also social citizen within this space. Now, when I'm using the phrase creative citizen, I want to be clear. I don't just mean artists, even though we are here because of the Arts Council. I don't just mean people who produce culture in the formal sense. I mean people who apply imagination, culture, community energy to problems of everyday life. People who look at the streets, their schools, their neighborhoods, their societies, and ask, what if we did this differently? That for me is creativity at its most powerful. And the UK has no shortage of creativity. We see it in music and theatre and literature, but we also see it in the way communities organize mutual aid, the way young people use digital platforms to tell their stories, the way citizens respond to crises with innovation. Creativity is abundant. What we lack currently is activation. There is an activation gap. Too many people never get the chance to use their creativity in civic life, in leadership, in decision making. The talent is there, the ideas are there, and we see them every day. The will is there, but the structures don't allow them to step forward in a way where it's meaningful. I'm partly going to give my own lived experiences as a case study, I suppose, but also to demonstrate four main levers around how to support in the activation of this work. So that's visibility, agency, networks, and accountability that any of you in this room can apply to activate the creative citizens that are around you and the people that you support. My entry point, like many people's, was volunteering, small, ordinary acts of showing up. For context, I come from an asylum-seeking background. So my family moved here when I was 10, and we did not necessarily get asylum status till earlier this year when I was 22. So I grew up more than half of my life within the asylum process. And as an asylum seeker, you don't necessarily have the access to the right to work or to further education after you become an adult. So it created this barrier where after sixth form, I really struggled with my mental health for a year and a half till I ended up getting clinical supervision because of my depression, where my therapist thought about how can I do something in the community that is meaningful and purposeful, but also allows me to do something. So I started volunteering at Manchester Cathedral as a welcomer every Sunday and at Manchester Mind as a volunteer and debt advisor. So that is where it began. It felt informal, it felt local. That's how I began to understand that citizens don't have to wait for permission. We can start where we are. And from there, I slowly started to understand, oh, systems are often far too inequitable to actually be meaningfully listening to the voices of people like myself or people that we often serve. So I started looking at trustee positions and did not initially get the first one to apply. I applied for, but now at the age of 22, I currently hold 11 governance positions, 8 across the charity sector and 3 across the public sector, but also with the Ivil Fund, all the way from large national organizations such as the Mental Health Foundation to local grassroots organizations such as Manchester City of Sanctuary. Those are serious responsibilities, but at the start, it wasn't obvious that someone like me would be invited in or even meaningfully stay in that place. Alongside governance, I've also contributed to national policy and research. I'm currently supporting Department of Culture, Media and Sport on the National Youth Strategy. I support international organizations through my consultancy work around anti-racism and EDI. But if you hear that, it all sounds like a lot, and you'd be right. But what matters is it isn't a CV. What matters is what unlocked each step for me to get there. the first unlock was visibility. I saw people who looked like me, young people, people of color, trying to influence decisions that mattered. If I had only ever seen older, wealthier, established figures in those positions, I might have never believed there was space for me. And I think it often became a barrier because I often felt imposter syndrome, being like, I'm not meant to be in spaces like that because of the lived experiences and the backgrounds that I bring. But I know that representation is so important because if people do not see themselves in spaces that we are trying to build, they will not join in, or even if they do, they won't feel like it's built for them. So what we need to do is make sure there's visibility and there's diversity and people can see people like themselves within our work. The second unlock for me was opportunity. Someone gave me more than an invitation. They gave me a real seat. They gave me the voting power. They trusted me with responsibility that was meaningful, not just symbolic. And that made the difference between being present and actually holding power within that space. I think within all of that, it wasn't just the opportunity for having just the position, but also I had a lot of people who were supporting me constantly. I talk about Gary quite a lot. He's been my mentor for the past 3 years. And I remember the first time we spoke, he was quite nervous. I was very nervous. I barely spoke. I only said, I think, a couple of sentences throughout the entire hour session. But he tried and he did not give up on me. And now I email him randomly. I talk to him randomly whenever I need it. I saw him before I moved down to university a couple of weeks ago, and he was crying because he said he's proud of me, but I don't think he understands that the support that he's given me is such an enormous part of who I am today and what I am able to do. So as a young person, it's so important to be able to know that you have to make that person proud, because if you want to believe in yourself because you want to make them proud more than you want to make yourself proud, and that is powerful. The third unlock for me was networks. I think it is so important to recognize that there's so many people out here who want to help people like me, but also people we serve. But sometimes you just need someone to connect you to someone else. And it does not take much effort or time, and people more than often happily contribute, but that one step can go a long way in making sure someone feels confident enough to take that seat of power once we give it to them. So from youth advisory boards to research collaborations, networks simply multiply creativity. They make you realize that you're not in an isolated individual, you're part of a wider system of citizens trying to reimagine the system that we're in. And I want to stress this: at each stage, creativity wasn't just about making art, it was about problem solving. It was about imagining new structures. It was about rethinking old systems, designing new pathways. Creativity for me is often about strategic innovation, or about how I respond to a voting matter, and so on and so forth. But going back to the initial question that I'm actually supposed to be answering is, how do we activate creative citizens? I've come to see these three levers that I just spoke about, but the fourth lever, I think one of the most important ones, is also accountability. Without proper accountability, all the good intentions will collapse, and it's simply tokenistic. I've sat in too many rooms where young people or diverse voices were included for optics but ignored when decisions were made. Activation requires mechanisms. It needs evaluation, it needs shared power structures, it needs transparent reporting that hold institutions to account for the inclusion they promise. And as an example of that is, it's not just something that you have to do from the get-go. If you recruit a young person onto your board, that's well and good, but then you have to support them. You have to make sure they're doing well. You have to make sure you're bringing their voices in when they're too nervous to speak, because at the end of the day, it's about making them feel welcome within that space. So visibility, agency, networks, accountability. These are not abstract words. They are levers that all of us can pull. And if you pull them, creative citizens are activated. If you don't, citizens remain sidelined. Now, let's turn this lens onto you. I'll ask 3 questions. And you don't have to answer them specifically. You can if you like, but the first one is, Who is visible in your work? Who gets to be seen, named, and credited? Is it always the same group, or are you making space for others? And I think it's so important to make sure you know this and are able to reflect yourself, so you know what are the changes that you need to make your space more inclusive. Second, where does agency sit? Be honest, who holds the decision-making power? Is it in the hands of the citizens and the communities that we're serving, or hopefully I won't get in trouble for this, or is it our council telling us what to do because they're the ones who are funding us? Or is it the institutions and regulatory bodies telling us exactly how we need to behave and do things, which is important, but we also need to know that power sharing is just as crucial. Third, how strong are the networks you're creating? When your project ends, does the citizen still have connections that endure, or do they go back to being isolated? So in my experience, was it about when I was depressed and I started volunteering at the cathedral? If I stopped volunteering at the cathedral, was that me going back to my room and being depressed? Or was I being given the tools and resources to actually take that experience and build something that allows me to do more and do better? These questions will let you see whether you're engaging citizens or activating them. Engagement is temporary. It's important, but it's temporary. It fills the room. Activation is transformative. It changes the system. Engagement asks for presence. Activation hands over authorship. So I'll end with this. Every one of you here holds resources, platforms, and influence. You have the ability to activate creative citizens by making them visible, by giving them agency, by connecting them into your networks, and by holding yourself and the people you work with accountable. It's about supporting them and being that trusted adult who's they can ask questions about the work, but also for me, it wasn't just about asking questions relating to my professional life to Gary. I've gone to him asking about, well, how does my credit score work? I'm heartbroken. How do I deal with it? Things like that, which are so crucial for young people or people who are vulnerable to have those sorts of spaces where they can talk about it. My journey from volunteer to trustee, from local projects in Manchester to national strategy, was only possible because others chose to activate me. If they hadn't, I might still be on the sidelines, contributing quietly, but never fully shaping outcomes. That's the point. Activation is not about inviting citizens to participate in your project. It is about handing them the tools of authorship. It's about saying, this is your system too. Go and rewrite it. So one last question I will ask you all is, and I want you to carry it with you beyond this room, is who are you going to activate next? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sammy. That was wonderful, very empowering. And I hope others felt the same too. I can see lots of claps there. So I'm not alone. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Sammy now? Feel free to put something in the chat, or you can put your hand up and I'll ask you to speak. I'm sure people, oh, from Kim. You should turn this into a small but powerful book, Sammy.
I'll think about that, but not sure how I'm going to squeeze that into my diary.
Not for the moment. I'll just see if there's anything else. Well, I'll let people as well in their own time if you want to add questions or comments or.
Also,
Please.
if beyond this room, if you needed to ask me a question or you think I could be helpful in any way, give me a shout. More than happy for Kate to give you my email address or for you to find me on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yep. We can definitely do that with everyone if they're happy. I'm just reading out Jess from Creative Lives. So thank you. A powerful reminder of the difference between engagement and activation. Thank you, Jess. Right, well, the next speaker we have today, we're joined by to talk to us, is Vicky Jackson, who is director of Jack of Hearts in Hartlepool and co-director of Wintertide Festival. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share some slides, but most of them are just pictures. So if you give me a moment just to do that. Hopefully this will work.
It works.
Okay.
Thanks. That looks great.
Brilliant, thank you. So my name is Vicky Jackson. As Kate introduced me, I am a director of my company Jack of Hearts, but up until 2018 I was a teacher. I taught in sixth form college for all of my teaching career. I was made redundant very suddenly. I taught performing arts, and one of the things I'm going to talk about quite a bit is a festival called Wintertide Festival that is based in Hartlepool. All the time during my teaching career, my students would be asked to take part in Wintertide Festival, and we would create all of the street theatre, and it'd be very much led by the students. So had I not had that experience of my students volunteering and being really sort of welcomed into that festival, then I might not be where I am now. So that was just a little bit of background. So I'm currently the managing director of Jack of Hearts, but with, I would imagine, most creative freelancers, that's just one of my roles. So I'm also a co-director now of Wintertide Festival, having been involved since the beginning of it, which it's been running 14 years. And I'm also working currently as a creative producer for Joseph Rowntree Foundation and their Emerging Futures programme, which is based in Hartlepool. All of my work's based in Hartlepool, and all of it is community driven. So I'm hoping when I press this, it's going to move slides. Yes. So as we were asked to talk about, there's a lot of information on this slide, I understand. We were asked to talk about how to activate creative citizens. So I really wanted to focus on the work that I've done with Wintertide Festival. Wintertide Festival is about making cultural experiences accessible for everyone. And I'm going to talk about a project that was entirely run by Jack of Hearts and now exists in Hartlepool that's free to anybody to access. But I'm going to start with Wintertide Festival as the platform that offers community groups the platform to do anything. So we're very much an independent community festival. We've been running 14 years. We began, before that 14 years, it began as a community on the headland in Hartlepool, which is a very small community, which is the old part of Hartlepool. It's a very beautiful place, but it's a very deprived place. People were feeling very lonely in the midwinter. They were feeling like there wasn't a lot going on at that time and people wanted something. So they started a little Christmas market, and then there started to be some performance happen around that. And then our local council liked the idea, so picked it up, called it Wintertide Festival, and engaged myself and the other two ladies who were directors of the festival to produce some artistic content for the festival. But then, as often happens, the funding wasn't there from the local authority anymore, and they decided to pull the festival entirely. The local people were really upset about that. So myself and the two other directors, Em and Rachel, decided that we would create a constituted voluntary group and we would run the festival. And that is what's been happening for 14 years. And then in 2019, which I'm afraid I've mixed these pictures up on here. So it is 2019 is the one in the middle, and the one that it begins is 2020. So in 2019, we had our biggest ever festival. It really felt like a proper festival. And made us overjoyed, but we were also really a bit scared being volunteers, having created this thing. And as you can see, we had 15,000 people turned up to this very small place, and we were really proud of it. But then, as people remember, in 2020, we planned our festival, but we couldn't do it. And Hartlepool was put into tier 3 restrictions 2 weeks before our festival. So we're outdoors. People could have still gone to the festival had it been the same. But because of those restrictions, we took it pretty much all digital. We had a self-led art trail. And as you can see in that picture, we had a digivan that we took around with animations that 300 children created in their own homes and sent in. And as part of that 2020 festival, which we called Keeping the Lights On, we had a project that we called Street Ambassadors. And that project really sort of went huge. And what the idea was, people couldn't leave their homes. So we paired a street in the streets that our festival takes place in with one artist. And online, those people in the street said what they wanted to create. They created work that was shown in their windows. And as people walked around on the hour that they were allowed to go and have a walk, they could see art in people's windows that was created by the community for the community. And then when the world came back to life and we were all allowed outside again, we took a little time to come back with our full 3-day event. But in 2023, we came back with a full 3-day event. And at that point, we realized how many people really wanted to be actively creative. And this has now become our real ethos, that the festival is curated by and created by the groups around Hartlepool. We bring groups together rather than creating sort of other things that is already going on. We create a platform that people can bring their work to. We're a barrierless festival. All our installations take place in public places, sometimes in people's gardens, and occasionally even in people's homes. So the Street Ambassadors project began just as a very small project, but as we've now preparing for our 2025 festival, why won't that move? Oh, no. Right. As we're now preparing for our 2025 festival, we've extended that project across the whole of Hartlepool. And what we're now doing is we're wanting to run a project in every ward. And we're nearly at that point where we've got an artist working in every ward, where they're linking with existing groups, but trying to give those groups an outlet. So ask them what they want to do, what they'd like to create for the festival. And we really put no barriers on what that outcome is. And so our theme this year is constellations, the idea being that as individual stars, we may shine brightly, but if we bring them together, then we can shine brighter together. So I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of our sort of Street Ambassador project. Their central picture is the church, the 16th century church in Hartlepool. And this is really the focal point of our festival. And every year we use a light artist to light that up. You've also got some of the giant fisherman's Gansey that we knitted with LV light up wool. And we did that in the community. So hundreds of people made stitches in that fisherman's jumper. Then we've got our crocheted UV creatures where we created a coral reef in a street. And then we've got various other pictures there showing our other things that we have on at the festival. And really what it is about giving people the confidence to create something, really giving them a safe place and holding them so they can then have a space to play and hopefully come up with something that can be shown at the festival. So the last picture in the very the right bottom corner is a label that we created for the fish that you can see in baskets. And that leads me on to something that Jack of Hearts, my company, did as part of the festival. So Hartlepool is quite a deprived place, but people are very proud of where they live. And we really wanted to bring the heritage to them and really make them think about where they lived and why they were proud of it. So we created a digital augmented reality trail across the headland. We created a digital sprite from a character that is well known in Hartlepool called Fish Annie. I'm not going to go into her story because I don't have time, but if you do want to know about it, there's my contact details at the end. We had children decorate fish that we'd made 3,000 of these fish for the Tall Ships Festival in communities, and we'd got people to collaborate on the story, the characters, the places that they wanted to highlight in the town. And you can see people here walking around deciding on where they wanted to highlight about what they were proud about. And you can see here that these are the points that we then put together. Children decorated the fish, and then we added those with photogrammetry onto the handmade fish. And now when you find one of those fish on the trail, it jumps up in the air like that, and you can see the decoration on them done by children. But when that pops up, it tells you which community made the fish, which child decorated it, and it's really a celebration of what the community can do together. And now that trail is free for anybody to access, and it really helps them to appreciate the coastline in Hartlepool as well. So I think I'm coming to the end of my time, so I'm going to try and wrap up very quickly. So I think when I was asked to put this together and we were thinking about the lots of different projects that we did, I wanted to really end on what we'd learned about how we get people to actively join in and not just be a sort of a passive participant, for want of a better phrase. And I think the first one was that meet people where they are. It's all very nice to have a great artist studio. It's all very good to work in a gallery, but for a lot of people, those places are really difficult to access, not maybe because of what we might think of as access, but just because they don't think it's a space for them. So we really made sure that we went out on the streets and did things. And this is a lovely workshop making some of those 3,000 fish that we handed out in a local pub, a tiny little pub called the Fisherman's Arms. This is a wonderful image created by a youth group that we work with, and we go to their meeting space, and we also work with the local history group. And then this one is in a social club that we threw a great big party for children and did lots of activities there, and they got to exhibit their work in our local art gallery. So that was really great as well. I think is going to lead me to the very last one. So if anybody does want to contact me, feel free to. There are 3 different things to contact. We've also got on that page 2 QR codes. One of them will take you to our Winterside Festival website, which has a really lovely video, but I didn't have enough time to show it today, about how Wintertide brings the community together, and I'll give you a little bit more information. And then the other QR code will take you to an article which the lovely Jess asked us to contribute to the Creative Lives blog about making activities accessible to people. And I do hope I haven't run over. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. No, we've plenty of time, so perfect. Thank you so much for a little insight into the Wintertide Festival and what kind of activating citizens looks like for you and Jack of Hearts. Would anyone like to ask any questions? We actually have a few minutes now. Oh, Olivia.
Hello. I just wondered what app it was that you used. That sounds absolutely brilliant and something that in tendering could work really well. So yeah, I just wondered what app it was that you used, and a kind of a bit more about on costs as well for that.
Yeah, we actually worked with, so during lockdown, I was introduced to an organisation called Digital City in Sunderland that at the time had a lot of funding for helping people to experiment with virtual and augmented reality products. So I did get to experiment with them, but then, as often happens again, their funding dried up. So after that, they introduced me to a company in Gateshead called oh goodness, Mad Digital, and they just started an arm called Let's AR Go. I did a lot of research and development with other places who had created their own app for a trail, and found that their feedback had been that not a lot of people wanted to download another app and another app. So I worked in conjunction with them because they host a few apps for really big tourist places around the Northeast, Annick Gardens, for example, Hadrian's Wall, those kind of places. And so they worked with me. So my trail is hosted on their app, but their hosting fees are less than £200. And they were very kind in that they'd just started this Let's AR Go. So I think in total, I got a £10,000 grant from the Heritage Lottery to do the whole project. I hope that answers your question, but I'm conscious of time. But if anybody does want to email me, I'm really happy to jump on a call with anybody and talk through how we actually did it.
Thank you, Vicky. We have one other question. We've got a little bit of time anyway before the break. From Becky Jones.
Hi, Becky.
Hi Vicky, hi everybody. Thank you so much so far to all the speakers. It's been really, really great. Vicky, I'm really interested in what you did with Wintertide, and with having like the artists in residence in the different wards. So I work for Creative Crawley, and we're a new town, and the way that it's built, we have like 14 neighbourhoods that sit around the town centre, and we're looking to do a town-wide festival in 2027, and we're working with residents to think about what that framework might be, and we're sort of thinking about that as a model of having artists in residence in different neighbourhoods. And I just kind of wanted to hear a little bit about the sort of timeline of that process and how that worked, and kind of from that practical perspective as well, in terms of like budget management, and whether the artists were given that agency or the residents given that agency. It would just be great to hear more on that.
Hi, thanks, Becky. It's a great question. I think it's probably a question that is too long for me to answer in the time that we've got allotted. But if you do want to email me, Becky, and by all means, our festival's coming up in November. You're very welcome to come and visit, meet the other directors, come and see the outcome of our Street Ambassador programme. So we're quite happy to have a chat about that. But I think we decided not to call it Artist in Residence, particularly because the sort of the weight of that title, and a lot of the people in Hartlepool, our whole idea is we're bringing the arts to them, because most people wouldn't go. I mean, one of our bits of feedback, which I think is slightly skewed because I don't think people understood the question, is 95% of our audience said it was the first cultural activity they'd taken part in. Now that's a brilliant thing for us to report on, but whether they understood what cultural event.
Yeah, exactly. There's that real what's so interesting, isn't it, is like the art speak, and like demything like all of these kind of like words, and like, you know, for us we have to switch modes and depending on who we're talking with and what that looks like, and it's really just making it more accessible, isn't it?
So our programme was called Street Ambassador to begin with, and the artist was the ambassador in that street. And they basically went in and went, these are my, well, the street told us first what kind of thing you'd like to do. And then we paired up a local artist. So I think one of my favourite ones was the street said, we want to make little models of our own houses.
Okay. Love that.
But we put them in touch with a model maker, and they did make identical models that sat in their windows, and they lit up. But then we put in lights along the street. So it was during COVID, so people walked along the street, and it was movement triggered. So as people walked, each garden lit up, the little houses lit up were already lit up in the windows, and it played Sugar Plum Fairy as they walked along. So it was beautiful. But we had the sort of vision to turn it into the installation. The community decided what they wanted to make. So yeah, I think one of the things I was saying, meet people where they are, was also about as an artist, we've got an idea, or as a creative, we've got an idea about what high quality work looks like. And we're constantly asking ourselves that we don't want paper plates hanging from trees, but how
Yeah.
do we make sure that the work we get from the community is high quality and fits what we need without going, you can't put that in. And it's really
Exactly.
about sort of going to them and finding out what their skills are, what they want to do. And it does take a lot of work, but we're really proud of it.
It's really incredible work, and thank you, Vicky. I'll drop you an email for more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, honestly, anybody's welcome to come visit the festival, see what we do, and chat to us about it, or chat to the people who've been involved. Hartlepool's a very fractured place, and it's one of the reasons why we want to do these 12 wards projects.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks, Becky. I think we'll probably just, if there's no other questions for the moment, we'll probably go into a break now. If that's okay with everyone. So we've got 10 minutes. So if you can join us about 6 minutes past 3, that would be fantastic. And I hope you all come back. We've got Back to Hours with Louise and also participant now, staff member Emma, joining us this afternoon. So yeah, see you shortly. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to be joined this afternoon. We can hear from Louise Yates from Back to Hours in Hull. We'll just spotlight you.
Oh,
Lou, so
I definitely need a spotlight. I've got a glitter curtain behind me.
you definitely need it then. Yeah.
So for audio description purposes, I've got dark hair with a fringe. My hair is up. I'm wearing a black top and I've got some glasses on and a glitter curtain behind me. Later in my presentation, I'm going to be joined by Emma. So if Emma just comes into shot. Hi. Emma's got blonde hair, black top.
And my new earrings that my friend brought me back from Porto.
I think she's showing off there. Okay, so I'm going to kick off with a short film that will tell you all about Back to Hours. We've been on a bit of a journey, and I do this by film because I can talk for hours and hours on end. So let me see if I can do this. Jess had told me earlier, so I'm going to share my screen. There we go, it's here. And then I need to click share sound, which I have done, which Jess reminded me. Here we go. Here we go. Let's see if it works. Here we go, it's working. Can everybody see that all right? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Okay, give me a thumbs up. Can you see that? Yeah, we're good. Okay. So we're going to kick off with this short film.
Back to Hours. What a journey, eh? From an idea way back in 2012 to where we are now. A charity and an NPO. Come on, let's go back and have a look how we got here.
I'll take you away to where the sun shines so bright, so bright. You can stare at the stars at night. You can tell me anything you like.
said it was a journey, didn't I? And we're still going, bringing everyone along for the ride. We'll always have people at our heart, and we'll keep on engaging, connecting, caring, chatting, bringing amazing experiences right to people's doorsteps. And we'll keep on doing it because it's what we love.
Okay, so that gives you a bit of an overview of Back to Hours. Let's see if the next slide comes. Oh, we're going again. Here we go. Here we go. I finished there with it's what we love because it is what we love. And people are very much at the centre of Back to Hours. It would never have worked if the residents in Hull weren't fully involved. And it was interesting what we talked about earlier about engagement and activation. And I think everybody the residents are involved with Back to Hours, it's a journey and everybody's on their own journey. So we're working with local residents on a daily basis, and we're commissioning with them, we're producing events and shows, and we're creating with local people. And so the people are really important, but what's the most important, but what's also important to us is that we're taking things out to people, meeting people where they are and on their terms, and everybody comes with their own terms. So it's really important that we're getting out and we're using the wonderful community assets that we've got. And sometimes that's we need to use an open top bus to get out there and to get hyperlocal. Sometimes, like I say, we're in a garden, a street, we're in a shopping centre, in a social club. So we're always scouting out what the new community assets are. And really, Back to Ours came from that idea back in 2012 about how can I reach people and ensure that the arts is for everybody. I'm really passionate about that. You know, I was brought up going in working men's clubs, you know, putting up every night, and got to see loads of amazing turns, which is why I've got this kind of addiction to glitter curtain. But I think and I was really open to seeing lots of different artists. But I'm just passionate about the arts should be for everybody. So it's really important that we are taking things out to people. So yeah, we use buses a lot. I think I've got a bit of fascination with buses as well. So I talked a little bit about we work closely with residents. We call that work and those kind of residents our hub members, and we have around 90 residents that are working with us as hub members. They're volunteering their time. I would say at the moment there's around 45 that are engaging, 20 odd that are really active at the moment. And this show, Chores, was the first show that the hub members programmed and selected venues for. So they selected the show, they selected the tour round neighbourhood venues in Hull, and they went to Edinburgh and they found this show there. I hadn't seen it, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't something that I'd seen, because I needed them to understand that I fully trusted them to make this decision. And I think there's something there about us being always honest with people about when the decision is 100% theirs and when it's a discussion and we're deciding together. And I had to kind of find that balance quite early on with Back to Hours. So I started that kind of commissioning and co-programming together. I started that by introducing a game to people called Programming Poker. And I went out and played the game all over the place. Like I was a lot in cafes. Morrison's Cafe used to get fed up with me. I was always in there, and I'd be asking people to program their own festival and think about what they would like to see. I learned so much from it. What I thought people wanted to see, it just wasn't. And what people really thought about is who they were going with. They were more kind of interested in talking about that. So it kind of brought up lots of questions for me, and it really opened my eyes to what I needed to think about and what I really didn't need to think about. So people have been at the heart of it from the very off, and I talk a lot about these things. So I talk about the ingredients of Back to Hours. So we like to mix things that are very familiar with things that are unfamiliar, so that it becomes comfortable for people. And then we bellyache as a team about the invitation, the welcome, and the exchange. because that initial invitation of how people are introduced to us is so important. So it could be that they've seen a flyer, but it's like, what did they understand what that was? Did it excite them? So we really think about that kind of initial kind of, it might be marketing, that a piece of marketing that they see, through to if that first invitation is, the first time they meet us is in a supermarket with a dolly, which when we was out with this dolly impersonator, we were actually wanting to talk to people about coming to a contemporary circus show that had been programmed by the hub members. And I was out with Dolly because the circus performers were out in Australia at the time when we were doing the engagement marketing for the show. So we went into Asda with Dolly, and I was we was handing out flyers. There was quite a few of us and volunteers, and I remember this guy really clearly. He just went past us and wasn't interested. Then Dolly came round the corner, and she was singing, and he came back and he went, "What's this about?" And he was interested. And afterwards, I spoke to him and I said, "What made you come back?" And he said, "Because I love Dolly Parton." And I was like, "Yeah, and she's a really good marketing tool for us. You know, she gets people's attention." So I really love that kind of mix of having a dolly there with us, helping us. And she's wonderful with people as well. She loves talking to people. And then, so something really familiar, and then we're mixing in something that's very unfamiliar. He'd not seen any contemporary circus before. And yeah, he came to the show with his family, and he was involved for a little while. He was a hub member. His life's kind of changed now. He's quite busy with his family. And this happens a lot as well. You know, we say to people, don't, you know, keep in touch, you know, and it has got that real family feel where people stay in touch for a while, and then, you know, it might be that it's not so busy, so they'll get back involved. And that's absolutely fine, because when you've kind of invited people in and you've created a space that's real welcoming, there's got to be an exchange. And that exchange can't be always what we want, what Back to Ours wants from this. There's got to be that conversation about, what do you want to get from me? And for me, that's what's really important. It's got to be a two-way street. And so often it's not. So yeah, we're going to lots of different spaces. So this is a school in the middle of a council estate in Eastall. And the schools in Hull, we actually got some building schools for the future funding, and before that funding was pulled by the government. And Hull had signed the deal, which was fabulous. We've got all these like new amazing schools, and I mean, this is such a great space. It's like a big atrium. You know, it feels more like a shopping centre than a school. The school's got a theatre as well, and we sometimes use that space. But this big atrium, I was like, you know, there's something amazing that we could do in here. So this is a good example of us, again, working with people in a way that that suits them. So we went to the school, we spoke to some young people there, and some of them wanted to be involved in the show, some of them wanted to be more kind of watching how the show was made. And also we went out into the local neighbourhood and spoke to people and asked how they would like to get involved. So we had a youth cast and we had an adult community cast as well on this show. And you can see how the space is just transformed. But I think working in this way just means that things do take a lot longer, and we need to give ourselves the time and space. If we're going to do this type of work, give ourselves the time and space to do it and to do it properly. I'm just moving things around on the screen, sorry. I'm just trying to flip the screen on, there we go. So yeah, we're all about people, and the family just keeps on growing. How we initially engage with people, and we do that in lots of different ways. So sometimes we put a call out and we ask for people, do you want to get involved? And we meet up with people. We do that sometimes individually, and sometimes we do that on a group basis. But then other times it might be that we're working in a neighbourhood. So we're working in one council estate called Orchard Park, and we wanted to do some work with families with young children. So we asked around and said, who's the family on this estate that's got the most kids? And we sought that person out, and they became a hub member. And I felt quite privileged actually to get to know that person, because they did so many things for the first time with us. They came to London with us. It was their first time they'd been on a train. It was the first time they'd been in an Indian restaurant with us in London, and we went to see a show in the Royal Albert Hall, and just being there with them, it was the most wonderful experience. So I feel sometimes I just think people are on their own journey, but they're taking us on that journey as well. And it's an absolute privilege to do that with people. That person now is still involved, but not as active as they were. They've got people off their street now that are really active and involved with us. They decided that they quite like London, and they wanted to, they organised a trip every year to go down to London and see a show. So they're doing this stuff for themselves now, and they're really active in their community. They're trained to be a youth worker, and they're now working on that as a youth worker. So sometimes, you know, people's journey kind of ends up going down a route where, yes, there's volunteering and employment at the end of it. But for other people, like the guy I spoke about earlier that we met in Asda, he's a postie. So, you know, he didn't enter into this thinking, I want to work in the arts. He just didn't realise it was something that he might be interested in. So everybody's journey is different. And, you know, I can't describe what somebody's journey is going to be. That's got to be carved out by them. And we've just got to be there to support people, you know, on their journey. I think I share a lot of pictures and I share films because I love, even if it's a live show, I love watching people. And I think you can just take so much from it and understand what we do. Because, yeah, it's got that family feeling and there's a lot of emotion attached to what we do. So I wanted to just drill into one project that we did a couple of years ago, because Emma was a volunteer on that project as well. So it kind of takes us into Emma talking about her experience as well. But we created a show on a council estate in Hull, council estate called Brandon. And for quite a long time, it was the largest council estate in Europe. So it's a big place. Lots of people are living up there. And we said we wanted to create something something quite big and something new, because we'd been working up there for quite a while. And we'd opened a chat shop. So we've been doing work up there during City of Culture Year, and we've done this like really crazy nose project where people made a plastic nose of their own nose. And we created a nose shrine that became a really interesting community space. We worked with an artist called Joshua Sofair. So if anybody's interested in that project, get in touch and we can chat a bit more about that. But once that project had kind of ended, people were coming to me and saying, "Look, we really miss the nose shop." And I'm like, what do you really miss about it? And what they miss is just having a space. We just want a space to be. We just want a space to talk. I was like, okay, so it's a chat shop that you need. They went, yeah, we need a chat shop. So everybody come together as a group, and we put in an application to the lottery, and that was successful, and the space opened. And I thought, you know, now we know that we're going to be here and there's a space here, I felt really comfortable about us doing something much bigger, because I knew at the end of creating something big, we would still be there. And so we embarked on creating a story with local people. We didn't hold any workshops. Feedback we were getting from people at the time was that they didn't want that. So we kind of interrupted daily life a little bit and got people chatting and talking and creating a storyline just within their daily lives. So there were conversations in queues that then led to cups of teas and more conversations. We did some pop-up photography. So there was all these different kind of activation happening to create this show. So again, I can talk for hours. I'm going to play a film so that I stop myself. So this is about the making of this show.
We've obviously been working for a long time at North Point Shopping Centre, and we've been developing relationships here and getting to know people. We're very much part of the community up here.
We've spoken to some amazing people, and that's where the story for Back to Brandon has come from just chats with people in the area. So whilst we've shaped the story, it's all them really.
We spent like 6 to 8 months just chatting to people, talking to people about the characters that have come from here, about when people first moved onto the estate. What was it like when the shopping centre got built? What about the nightclub that was here? What about the pub that was here?
A lot of the people in Brandon had said to us, there's a ghost. Have you seen the airman? There is a ghost here. Everybody knew about it. And we thought, right, there is a story here. Why is he coming back? What's he looking for?
We're trying to do this kind of scale of show that would normally come to a city centre in a local community, and it's really important for us to kind of be working in those local areas as Back to Ours, and Branshome's quite close to our heart. So at the end of the first 2 years of our phases of Creative People and Places project, this feels like a really good finale and a kind of a lovely crescendo of our relationship with the local community.
I've been looking after the community cast, which has been great. They've all been very enthusiastic. They've got stuck in straight away, and we're loving it. You walk into the dressing room and it's quite electric, really, and I love it. It's quite inspiring to see so many people giving up a lot of their spare time, because it's quite a grueling rehearsal schedule. They really give it everything they've got, and I think it shows.
There's a lot going on in Back to Bransome, lots of different elements that we're all pulling together tonight. 2 double-decker buses, pyrotechnics going on the roof, live opera, lots of circus. So they've got a stage in the centre of the car park. They've got a Chinese pole with them, a cloud swing, and some aerial silks as well.
I am volunteer coordinator. I've got almost 30 volunteers. We briefed them last night, so they're all ready to go. Come show night, they'll know exactly what they're doing, where they're going to be. It's all been about upskilling those people as volunteers as well, and giving them really good opportunities. It's really important for us to do stuff with people, so we don't do stuff to people. We try and include them as much as possible, so that they completely feel included and they feel that it's for them, and they absolutely deserve it just like everybody else.
I am playing Karen, who is a punk from the 80s. She's sort of narrating the show. She's going to be stood on the roof of North Point Shopping Centre, which is very cool. And yeah, she's sort of guiding the audience through. She's jumping around in the timeline. She's taking them through the history of Bransome.
Throughout the show, you go through this journey that starts in the 1940s, and we meet Frank and Edie, and they take us through time.
Frank Dobbs is kind of the embodiment of the ghosts, the local ghosts of the area, a pilot stationed at RAF Sutton.
I'm playing the part of Edie. Her husband was Frank, who died, and she spends the rest of her life yearning to see him.
It's very exciting, and being a part of this this stage of the production, you realize how much work has gone into it.
To give people who wouldn't normally necessarily have the opportunity to do something like this a chance to do it and enter into a completely new world. It's life-changing for some people.
The joy of these shows that are responding to the place and to local people mean that they really resonate locally, and hopefully everybody here feels like it really moves them. It's quite a moving show, and that it's really important to them.
People in Bransome are ready for something, completely new.
It's been made with love, and it's a love story.
It's bringing something different. It's bringing like a new lease of life into Bransome, but telling their story for them to share and feel proud of.
Oh, I had to keep the kissing at the end.
They really went for it, didn't they? I think they felt it.
They did feel it. Okay, so I'm just going to pass you on to Emma, but I'm just going to sort the PowerPoint out first. So there was around 60, there was around 65 in the cast for Back to Bransome, and Emma was a volunteer. So over to Emma. This is Emma and her husband on this nice picture.
Hi. So yeah, so my journey started with Back to Ours, gosh, almost 10 years ago now, maybe a bit more. So I was a mum then of just my first 2 boys, just looking for something really. I didn't drive, we was on a low income, and I was just looking for a bit of excitement, and I come across Back to Ours, and they were putting on their first show. Tickets, £3 a ticket, and I was like, yeah, we're heading down. It was in our area, and well, that was the moment I fell in love. It was this gorgeous little puppet show, all the way from Germany. And there would be no chance that I'd be able to put my boys over to Germany and see the show. They brought it to us, and that just continued happening, really. I ended up planning all my half terms around the Back to Ours shows. I saw shows from all over the world, always priced at £3 a ticket. And then after that, I saw a post asking online, just asking if I wanted to be more involved. Do you enjoy Back to Ours and what they do, and do you want to be more involved? And I was like, hell yeah. So I'd already got involved and going to see adult shows actually before then. So we'd decided that me and my husband wanted some treats to see. And we first went to see a show that was actually in that Brandsome Centre where you saw that Back to Brandsome show on that video. And it was a show about Joan of Arc. And it was a drag queen putting on that show. And me and my husband rocked up, sat on some little seats straight outside the Iceland that was in there, not knowing what on earth was going to happen. And it was just this incredible show about Joan of Arc. And I became obsessed with Joan of Arc for quite a time afterwards. So then when we saw that person, me and my husband both said, oh yeah, let's get involved. And we both became volunteers actually. Volunteers helping out at different shows. And then I became a hub member in my area. I got other people, other neighbours involved. Was able to actually plan shows and select shows what I thought our neighbours and my community would like to see. They even brought, so at that time I was doing something called Playing Out, where we shut our street off for the children and the neighbours to come out, and we absolutely just had a brilliant time. And I was like, let's have some treats, and I mentioned it to Back to Ours, and they come up trumps. We had singers, we've had performances, we've had like chalk artists. I mean, I think you can see in the picture there, that's us all, that's in our house in the background, and that's us all sat out on deck chairs watching. Can't even remember what performance it was, we had that many. Can you sing? Is it Ruth? Oh, it's Ruth singing. So yeah, so we had like 1940 singer Ruth, and you can imagine, you can see, so a lot of the people there, if you can see, they've got like floral things around their necks and things. So we, in lockdown, we did Party on My Doorstep. So through lockdown, Back to Ours visited all our neighbours with a Party on My Doorstep. It had a DVD in, some posh scones, some things to dress up, and I can't tell you the fun they had. It was delivered by a butler on their doorstep. So you can imagine the excitement when he rocked up that day with all these parcels. What's next? Next, what I love.
So from there, there came an opportunity to work with us.
Yes, I've been doing volunteering at different shows, and obviously being a hub member. I went to Edinburgh. I was taken to Edinburgh I'd go with my husband, and so I was there to see it. So I brought it back. That's the one we want, and yet Lou brought it back. And it was a very proud moment, sat watching the show and seeing everyone else's faces, watching this show, knowing that I had an input on bringing that to Hull, and that those people in Hull would not have seen that show if it wasn't for us choosing it. It was a very proud moment.
Equally though, you have seen some things where members have said, Lou, what are you thinking of? Because I've said, can you go check this out and see what you think? And they've got, in the first 5 minutes, they've gone, this is not what people are on want to see. So sometimes it works that way.
Yeah, and I feel, and maybe not in the beginning, but as we become hub members and we did lots of meeting and things, we felt the power to say, actually, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
This is not what we want. This is not, oh, my kids won't enjoy that, or, oh, as adults, no, we fancy something a bit more like this. Yeah.
So we've talked quite a bit about what is and I think that conversation happened quite early on, and people were interested, not just in themselves, were they, but other people, where people that we weren't kind of reaching, where those gaps were. But I think at first people were thinking about their own streets, their own areas, and then as people got more involved, they started thinking more about other people, didn't they?
Yeah.
And other areas, I think. So back Brandsome Chat.
Yep, so I now work at Brandsome Chat. So as you can see, that was where the Back to Brandsome show went on. This is us. This is a photo actually only about a couple of weeks ago where we got another 3 years funding. So it's our our third set of 3-year funding. So this is just an open space where anyone can just pop in, have a cup of tea, have a chat. I do the Saturday crafts on a Saturday for the family. So obviously, if I'm going from just someone with my kids enjoying the show to going to becoming a hub member, then going to becoming a volunteer, and then eventually working for Back to Hours, it's been quite a journey. And now I'm running the steering group up at the shop, which is similar to the hub group what I was initially on. So the steering group are all local Ramsden residents, and they are planning they planned last month's crafts, they planned the activities that they want to see in there. They are basically running the place, and to see them feeling like I felt empowered, that, you know, what they want to see is what's happening. And as you can see in the photo, what a lovely atmosphere it is. And yeah, well, there's never a day I don't want to go to work, Lou.
Yeah, I think I can see that in that picture. It's lots of fun in it.
Yeah, and again, we've had lots of people growing confidence there to being very nervous when they first come in and very quiet, but that, you know, they've made friends, and then we'll often have pop-up shows in there, and the things that they've seen and they're like, oh wow. And definitely it's the things that they wouldn't have gone to see before, but it's in the shop what they're already familiar with. We're all so comfortable in there, and then to bring it into that space where they're already comfortable, well, they're willing to give it a go. And there is times we've brought stuff and they've been like, I'm not sure about that. And then there's other times we've brought stuff and they're like, oh my goodness, if they do another show, can they come back again? And we've done that, haven't we? Like with Fladden recently, they fell in love with Fladden, so we've had Fladden back again because that's what they wanted.
We're just about to embark on doing some commissioning through the shop. So the hub members have created a commissioning process that the steering group are going to adopt. So we're just about to embark on that, which will be really exciting. But we shall stop there, and I'll stop sharing my screen, and then it leaves it open for people to ask some questions if they'd like to.
Thank you.
I said we can talk through.
Don't start talking too fast. That's all out, and I'm like, there's loads of things that I'll think later. Oh, we should have said that. But
that was fabulous. I think I was just jotting down little takeaways about key things that you said there as well, Emma. So you mentioned power. For me, I thought that was, you know, you said that sense of feeling that we have power. And
yeah, I think especially when just your day-to-day lives can get a bit, especially like mine was when I was looking for something brilliant to take my children to, you know, to change the monotony of life. And I think that's a lot of the people on Bransome just feel a bit, I just want something a little bit different, a little bit exciting. And we do that at the shop, don't we? We bring lots of little treats and I love my treats. I love my treats at shop.
I like that you said that about treats, though, because people do deserve a bit of care, don't they?
That's why sparkle in our lives, and as well to give them, to know that they've planned what happens in that shop, to give them, yeah, it's a really good feeling to know that you're making a difference. And especially, I know when Sam come in, like the other Saturday, it was a craft that she'd planned, and well, the kids went wild for it. And she was like, oh, Emma, they love it, don't they? And I was like, yeah, you chose that. Yeah, it's a nice feeling. It's a good feeling. And who knows what that'll lead to, you know.
Yeah, well, just look at you. I think that's amazing. Your kind of trajectory where you came in, and I think that kind of spark and sparkle that you mentioned, like you encompass that, how you found the spark and then you've become the spark.
But I was definitely a lot quieter. And I think as I went on trips with Back to Hours and got involved and went to a lot of meetings, and you know, when you started speaking, people stopped and listened to you, and you were like, oh, I like this. You know, and they're like, oh yeah, we're bringing that show, do you know, the one that she suggested? And you're like, yeah, oh, all right then. And it makes you feel, you know, it makes you feel good.
Thank you. Right, I could ask questions, but there's some questions coming through the chat. And just so for everybody else, please feel free, however you're comfortable, put something in the chat. You can ask everybody or just Lou and Emma. But we've got from Amy from Ideas Test. She said, loved hearing about Back to Hours. Is the shop space given in kind or do you have to rent it?
That's a good question. We started off our relationship with North Point Shopping Centre by moving around from shop to shop so that they could benefit from rate relief. So that's always a good way in. Again, it's about the exchange. What suits you, what suits us. So we did some trials by moving around different units, and then so we got to know them a little bit first. So we came to an agreement that we will pay service charge and no rent. The centre manager has just come onto our board. We also have a hub member on our board as well. So they're quite involved. The shopping centre are quite involved now, but that's not always been the case. So the service charge is really high. The service charge is around £40,000 a year. If we paid rent in there, the rent for that unit is nearly double that. It's a really busy shopping centre. Yeah, it was the busiest shopping centre in lockdown in the region. So it's bang smack in the middle of this big council estate.
A lot of people don't even actually leave the estate.
No.
There's families that are coming that can be like 4 or 5 weeks not leaving the estate to go into town or anywhere. They will just the Ransom Centre is like their hub, you know.
Yeah. So, so you pay for a proportion of that over the year, or is it for
the whole year? The service charge is £40,000. Yeah, and then we have to pay utilities. It's all electric, so we pay for the electric bill as well ourselves.
Great. Thanks for that. Does anyone else have any questions to ask Lou and Emma or any of other speakers today? As I say, we can share contacts and
because maybe Lou will just start talking and talking.
We'll mute ourselves.
I think I've had lots of positive feedback saying, wow, that's amazing. So feel free as well to put something in the chat now.
Yeah, if you're ever in Hull and get the bus to Ransom and pop in and see us.
I think the hardest thing with the shop has been keeping it as a chat shop. And that's what people said they wanted. And sometimes we ask people what they want, and we've got to make sure that we're asking people that then we are delivering on that, because a lot of funders and other stakeholders kind of want to come in and teach people something or share awareness of something. And I'm like, that's why we've got the resident steering group there, because you can't just come and use that for your own agenda.
No, we want them to feel comfortable that that's their space and that they feel comfortable in. And so we get, you'd be amazed how many gentlemen we get in, particularly older gentlemen that often live alone, that often, so I can share endless stories. Like I've got a wonderful relationship at the moment where there's an elderly gentleman who lives alone and he's become friends with a mum and their partner and their little ones. They now call him Grandad. The relationships like that are just happening all the time. And we get a lot of people that live alone, who come in, that can go days without speaking to anybody. They come in the shop, it's not just me they chat to. In fact, they've often done chat to me. They've made friends in there now. They've sat together. Oh, how are you today? And then they're like, oh, I'm off to Greg's for lunch. Oh, I'll come. Oh, yeah, come on, we'll go together. And yeah, it's just a lovely space, really. And lots of lovely connections being made all the time.
So is it an officially badged like warm space as well then, the shop?
Yeah, it's a warm space, yeah.
Yes, yeah, so obviously people can come in. So there's no, the doors are open all the time and people can just wander in and out, as they feel. We sometimes get people popping in just for 10 minutes and just going, oh, how are you today? You okay? Oh, great. Or sometimes we have people in there spending all day with us.
We do have people coming in crisis as well.
Yeah.
So instead of ringing the police or ringing an ambulance, they'll come in to us. People trust us. We've been there, like I say, a long time. So yeah, there's that side of it as well. There's a lot of safeguarding, a lot of boundaries we have to put in place.
Imagine. Thank you for that. I'm just looking at the comments here. So Rachel is a practitioner, and has said she's just moved back to Hull as well.
She needs to get in touch, yeah.
Get in touch.
Come down to Grantham. We're off to Europe. You can get
Drop
some new
in.
clients and then pop in to see us. Honestly, we're so welcoming. You know, no one needs to pre-book or anything like that. You just wander in.
Great. There you go, Rachel. And then is it Ione Bourne? Has said any guidance on starting these relationships, especially with communities who aren't creatively engaged and are convinced the arts isn't for them.
Oh yeah, we get people all
that's
the
a big
time
one.
telling us. It's a big one, isn't it? I think we've all touched on that, haven't we,
I
today?
think if you'd have said to me, do you want to be involved in the arts? Back in the day before I'd seen that show, I'd be like, what? When I don't even know what you're on about.
Yeah, I think we've all touched on that, haven't we? It's about you've got to come at it in
You've got-
so
you're
many
going to
different
them
ways.
as well, aren't you?
Yeah,
You're going to
we're
them,
to
so it's
different. And I think there's loads of different tactics that you can use. So we're happy to speak to anybody about that. That's the type of challenge we love. Because one size ain't going to fit all, is it? And I think sometimes you've got to interrupt daily life with things. So have some stuff that's pop up, have some conversations with people, as many different ways as you can. I found that game of cards really useful from the off, because I wasn't really asking very much of people. I was asking them their opinion. So right from the off, the relationship was one where I was saying, you know something I don't, and I always think that's quite important. I need you to help me. I'm looking on planning this festival, but I really don't know what people would like to see. That was a really good starting point, because I genuinely wanted to know from them. And I think people could see that that's how the festival was going to be planned, that information was going to, like I said, make a difference. And I think that's starting a relationship where you're on an equal level is always good. And I hadn't always done that in the past. You know, as I know Vicky was saying she was a teacher performing arts, I used to do as well. And I think I used to come at it from the point of view of like, I'm knowledgeable about this subject and I'm going to teach you this thing. I can't, that doesn't work with Back to Hours.
She's even got me performing and it's not my thing at all.
Yeah, I love it. People say, I'm never going to perform. I'm like, yeah, you just don't know.
That's key as well, doing it, bringing things into, like when you brought things down our street. Well, there was a lot of people that would never have travelled to a show or anything like that. Well, it was on their doorstep. It was up to them if they make it easy. Because they know there's something going on.
Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, and it's the way they feel they're already comfortable. If they want to get happy about it,
they can walk away from it if they want to.
So it's nothing just like that local shops. Well, they pass that local shop every day anyway, so they might just stop and have a little nosy.
And sometimes you're not always going to get it right. I think, we've got to be comfortable with sometimes getting this stuff wrong.
That's a good point.
And learning from it.
Thanks, Lou. And Ione, I'm going to say, pronounce your name wrong, Ione, said we'll definitely be borrowing the programming card game.
Yeah, you need to get out and play some cards with people. Get out and just chat to people, I think is the key.
Yeah. And being in the place. I think this is it from all of you. It's about being
we've all said that,
in that space where everyone meeting people where they are.
I work doing engagement as well, and we've got a little pop-up art project, haven't we, at the minute? So I was out engaging for that, and I literally just spent maybe an hour outside a local chippy yesterday, just chatting to people. I had the leaflet, but if people didn't want to chat, they didn't. But I'm very good at getting people chatting. But I was petting dogs and asking kids for a cheese straw out of their coupons bag. It's just all about just getting to their spaces and whatever.
Yeah, making people feel comfortable. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for us.
Oh, well, I should say we've got actually. If anyone has any further questions, feel free to message us. But we can, if the speakers are okay, we can share contact details or afterwards if you want to make contact, or add them into the chat here because we'll be saving that. And I have, before we close, I've someone better than you, just having a look. There's anything? Yeah, there you go. Sharing contacts. To say we have got before we close the session, we've got a very, very short survey, just a few minutes, and we'd be really appreciative if you could fill it in. It's just about why you've come, how you've found today, and any other ideas for future sessions. And for future sessions as well, next week on the 1st of October, we have a follow-up session from today, exploring kind of the same theme about activating citizens, but kind of over to you. So we'd love, I think we've still got spaces, so please feel free to drop in. It's 12:15 to 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 1st of October. And it's it's like an open space event. We've also got further other events you can book as well online. So thank you so much as well. Right, I'm going to share the survey. I'll do my thanks. Pause quiz. Here you go. Should take just maybe a couple of minutes. Please do drop us a line as well. And thank you so much, everybody, for those who've come today, but very much to our speakers. And that's Lou, Emma, Vicky, Sammy, Jess, and of course our fantastic BSL supporters, interpreters, Joe and Claire. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'll just leave the poll open for a few minutes and see if I can also just share the final slide. Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. And please have a fantastic rest of the day. And we look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Thank you.